Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. In this episode, I'm going to share with you 7 specific strategies to address your weaknesses. Now, I know it's not fun to talk about your weaknesses, but here's why I'm bringing this up to you today. Because you will get your best results when you're working on activities that play to your strengths. And conversely, if you look at the opposite situation, you're not going to get your best results when you're doing work that you're simply not good at. Now, if you're spending a significant amount of your time doing things that really play to your weaknesses, you're probably going to feel frustrated, overwhelmed, disappointed, or dissatisfied with the situation and your contribution that you're making. So the more of your time you can spend doing what you're good at and love, right, the better your results are going to be. That just makes sense, right? But what I want to talk to you about today is, so what do you do about that list of weaknesses? And what if those activities are really chewing up a lot of your time? At the end of the day or the end of the week, you're probably not feeling too good about what you're doing. At least that's a possibility. So, it's obviously not realistic that you spend 100% of your time always doing what you're good at. That's not realistic, right? Because everybody has some tasks, assignments, or responsibilities that are going to not be our favorite, right? But it's in your best interest to aim for, I would say, an 80-20 split, okay? Now, I've conducted many workshops for companies, organizations, teams where I've taken everyone through the process of identifying their top strengths. And inevitably, I'll get the question, okay, this makes a lot of sense, but what do I do about my weaknesses? Okay, so that's why I want to share this with you today. So you've got these specific strategies. Now, the reason why it's so important for you to have strategies to address your weaknesses is so you have that much more time to spend on what you're good at. And one of the skills, important emotional intelligence skills for a successful leader, is to have the skill of self-regard, which is you're self-aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and you have proactive strategies to deal with those weaknesses. Now, if you want to hear more about self-regard, you can go to episode number 7, Emotional Intelligence, What Every Leader Must Know. And that's the particular skill I talk about in that episode. All right, so let's get started. So strategy number 1 is get clear on what your weaknesses are. So one way to do this is to observe, starting today, starting right now, observe what you avoid, dread, or procrastinate in your current role. That's a clue that that's something you either don't enjoy or you're not good at it. You could even think about previous roles you've had. What did you enjoy most? What did you enjoy least? These will give you important clues. And then you can look at those activities and make a determination. What was it that really played to a weakness? And make a list. Now that list can be 5 activities, 10, but you have to have a list so that then you can take each item on the list and come up with the proactive strategies. So let me give you a couple of examples. I certainly have worked with and had clients who really didn't enjoy, anything had to do with math, budget exercises, Excel spreadsheets, right? I've worked with people that really shied away from any of those sort of deeper analytical, spreadsheet exercises, or maybe attention to detail wasn't their strength. I know that for myself, one of the things I realized many years ago is that I'm fantastic when you need somebody to come in and start from scratch, build a team, build out a program, take something and completely create something from scratch, something that requires that getting started, get it off the ground, get it implemented, even with an aggressive schedule over time. However, if you ask me to do something that's more consistent process, doing the same thing over and over again with 100% accuracy, then I get so bored, I lose interest. It's just not my strength. I would consider it a weakness. If you put me in an operational role doing the same thing every single day, I would be bored, frustrated, and I would feel disappointed with my contribution. So for me, I view that as a weakness. Okay. So right now, you're just trying to get clear on what are your weaknesses. Okay. So strategy number 2, evaluate the percent of time you spend on these activities. So let's say hypothetically, there were 5 things that you came up with that you're not good at, you don't enjoy it, they really frustrate you, and they happen to be on your plate right now. Evaluate the percent of time you spend on them. Now, if you're spending 20% or less of your time on those activities, that's a pretty good starting point. That means, out of a 5-day work week, maybe it's the equivalent of 1 day's worth of work on things you don't enjoy, aren't good at. And this isn't about being frivolous, like, oh, that task, I just don't like doing it, it's beneath me. No, this isn't about that. It's about really tapping into where you get your best results, so you make your biggest contribution to the organization. So I don't want you to feel that this exercise is going to be all about being really picky and fussy and saying to your boss, oh no, I don't enjoy that task, so I'm not going to do it. It's not about that. It's positioning you to make your best contribution and doing your best work. Okay. So in fact, I once had a client who was spending more than 90% of her time on activities that didn't play to her top strengths. She wasn't really happy in her role. No surprise. She didn't feel satisfied or fulfilled by the work she was doing. In fact, she felt constant stress, overwhelm, and fatigue, and it was affecting her health. Again, no surprise. So if 5 days out of the week, every single day, you're spending almost all of your time doing things that you don't feel are your best work, it can really chip away at your self-confidence and how you feel about your role. So strategy number 3 is once you have the list, you know how much time you're spending on those activities, review the list of weaknesses to see what you could do about each one. You want to come up with a strategy for each one of those items on your list. Now, strategy number 3 would be pick out the ones that you're actually really motivated to improve and incorporate them into your own professional development plan. So let me give you an example. Let's say you feel like one of your weaknesses right now is, giving presentations. You feel it as a weakness, but you're really motivated to improve your presentation skills because you feel like, you're a good communicator, you want to be better at this. And as a leader, you know that presentation skills will be an important part of your leadership growth. And you can see how giving presentations more effectively can support your goals. So you may target this as part of your professional development plan, right? Now, on the other hand, let's say you dread working on something and you really don't see how it's going to help you in the long run for you to be good at it. I'll just take the example of you dread working on in-depth analyses with detailed spreadsheets. You're not really good with numbers. You're not very confident working with Excel. You're not that interested or motivated to become good at this. It's sort of a necessary evil, but you're not really very good at it. And no matter how much time you invest in it or get better at it, it's just never going to be your strength. It's never going to be what sets you up for success. So you got to ask yourself, what's at stake here? One hand, you're highly motivated to work on something. You can see where it connects to a goal. So yeah, you could work on it. On the other hand, it's something that you're just not motivated to do it. You don't see the long-term benefit. So you decide, what's at stake? Is it worth it to invest some time? Now, if you invest time in fixing a weakness, improving in an area that doesn't come naturally, it may never be what you're known for, what people come to you for help for because they say, oh, wow, you're the expert, you're fantastic. However, it will at least allow you to do, a decent job, feel good about yourself and tackle it. But you've got to decide everything on your list. Is it something worth improving based on what your motivation is and what's at stake? Or not, and then we'll get to the other strategies. I'll give you an example. For me, there was a point in a job that I had, what our industry was in financial services within technology was post-trade settlement processing. And I understood some of the basics, but I wasn't as knowledgeable as I thought I should be. But I've got to tell you, I really found it so boring. And I knew that it was something I should do, but it was never where I got excited. I was always, my eyes would glaze over. I thought it was the most boring thing ever to talk about. And so at one point I had it in my development plan that I was going to learn more about it. I even asked somebody to mentor me. I was doing more reading, but it just was never going to be something where I was going to get my best results, make my biggest contribution, or build out my reputation. Instead, I switched and put my focus on areas that were my strengths. I focused on leadership skills, and I specifically worked on decision-making strategies within organizations, building high-performance teams, fostering a culture of innovation, and topics that were of immediate value to me that I loved and where I ended up getting my best results and making my biggest contributions to the company. Had I tried to become that post-trade settlement processing expert or even, really knowledgeable of it, It was going to be a painful process. So I'm just sharing my own history with you so that you can, for yourself, decide what are you really motivated to improve and how does that relate to your goals? I know for me, I made a good choice and I don't look back. That's something I still don't want to learn anything else about. So anyway, the next strategy number 4, is once you get this awareness of the things you probably know instinctively, the things that if somebody were to come to you with a new request, new opportunity, you probably would know right away if it's something that you are drawn to or would prefer to say no. So the next strategy is where you can and where you have discretion, just say no. Find someone else. If it's something where you have discretion, you will not be doing the team, the organization, a service if you find yourself falling into the trap of always saying yes, agreeing to take on work that you know you're not good at, because the team overall is not going to get its best results if you continue to spend too much of your time doing things that, again, don't play to your strengths. So if you're really not good at it, be deliberate and intentional on how you respond. Do you really, really have to say yes, or could you say no? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm the best person for that project. I think that project would require somebody who really understands XYZ. Probably better, you know what? Maybe you should ask so-and-so. They'd probably be a better fit. If it's a situation where you can't say no, of course, that's a different story altogether. But I want you to be self-aware so that when opportunities come along, you don't find yourself in the trap of always saying yes, even though you're dreading it, because you're really not doing anybody any favors by doing that, unless it's an emergency. Strategy number 5 would be delegate it. So if you have a team reporting to you, explore each person's strengths so you know who has strengths in areas where you may have a complementary set of skills, but their strengths may be your weakness, right? And delegate assignments according to each person's strengths. Now, you'll actually be doing them a favor if you increase the amount of time that each person gets to spend working activities that play to their strengths, because you'll actually be enabling them to get their best results, right? While freeing yourself up to do the same thing. I'll give you an example. I've mentioned this example before, but I once swapped tasks with a director who worked for me where we each got to work on something we enjoyed. Now, technically, I could have simply delegated a project to her and had it been a one-way street. But I could see there was something on her plate that she should do that I actually really enjoyed and was good at. So we swapped projects. We both produced better results. Now, forget the hierarchy and the written job description. We could have just stuck to it out of principle, but it made sense to swap projects or trade them because she got to do something she was good at. I got to do something that was comfortable and easy that I enjoyed, and it was a win-win. So delegating doesn't always have to be that two-way street. You're going to use common sense to see what really works with your team members. But the more you know what each person's good at and what they love to do, the more you're going to be able to help them with their own engagement, right? Because I've mentioned on another episode that, and it's episode number 27, delegating to improve your brand and increase engagement. So if you've got a team of, let's say you have a team of 10 people working for you, and you know intimately what each person's good at, and you get a new request, new project, and you give it to somebody that really matches their strengths, their engagement goes up. They're excited. Okay, so be really deliberate about how you delegate, and that can complement your weaknesses. So going back to that, I don't know why I'm stuck on Excel today, but let's say this project or request or assignment requires some detailed analysis using, fancy spreadsheets, and you're like, oh God, I don't want to do it. Well, maybe you have somebody on your team who would love to do it. It's what they enjoy doing, okay? So be strategic about it. Strategy number 6 is collaborate with others. Really get to know what others, your colleagues, other coworkers most enjoy working on and their strengths. Now, these people don't work for you. Otherwise, it would have been called delegating, right? But they work with you. However, when you get an assignment, whether it's a big assignment, a small assignment, when you know who has a strength that complements you, you can ask that person for help, get their advice, suggestions, guidance. You may even go a step further by asking them to review the work you're doing and make suggestions. So for example, let's say you're creating a document, a presentation, you're about to go to a client to solve a particular problem, whatever the scenario, and you know that it's tapping into something that is a weakness. Who in your organization has a strength that could really come in handy, and go to that person and say, you're really good at X, right? Building relationships, communicating, coming up with, strategic ideas, whatever it is, and ask that person. Now, for me, because I tended to be more strategic, I would go to people who are very, very detailed oriented because they would be able to pick out some of the gaps in my writing, my presentation, something that wasn't clear because I hadn't gone far enough. So you need to pick out who are those people who have complementary strengths so that you can ask them for help or for guidance. Now, if it's a larger project, you probably would even put a project team together so that in total, everybody on the team covers all the aspects of the project. You want to be sure that the skills required are represented. So for example, let's say there's 5 people on a project team. You want to make sure you have a diverse skill set. So everything the team needs to handle, there's people that can do, every aspect of it, but it's 5 people coming together with different perspectives, different skill sets, right? And that's what you do, what anybody would do, putting a team together. So just giving you an example, you want to think about not just expertise and knowledge, but how they work. So for example, one person who's an activator may love to put their foot on the gas, get started. You can always count on them to keep things moving because they know that what's needed is to gain momentum and achieve the goal by a certain date. You may have another person on the team who's more deliberative. They do careful analysis and they always are very, very cautious before they pull the trigger. But you don't really want them to spend so much time on analysis that they don't get moving. So when you pair those 2 people up, one person has their foot on the gas and the other has their foot on the brake. When you pair them up, it's a good combination because you know that things will be well thought out before they're executed. So it's just to give you a really brief example. But strategy number 6 is definitely, instead of going it alone, make sure you ask for help and collaborate with others. Now, strategy number 7 is, if all else fails, let's say you happen to be going after a new role. Before you take that role, assess the percent of time you might be spending on these activities that don't play to your strengths. Before you accept a job offer, right? Be honest with yourself. If you take that job, how much of your time will you be spending doing work that doesn't play to your strengths? Because if you go into that role and you're doing work that, it doesn't really line up, you're in that, you're going to spend more than half your time doing things that you cringe when you think about it, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment and not getting the results that you could get. Okay. So for these 7 strategies, in the beginning, I talked about identifying your weaknesses, how much time are you spending on them, and then a few strategies on what do you do about each weakness? How can you come up with proactive strategies? Are you going to work on improving it, saying no to that work, or maybe negotiating with your boss to see, is there something we could do about this, right? You may negotiate, but just say no, delegate, and collaborate with others. And then lastly, if you're going after a new role, make sure you take this into account so you or improving your situation. So let's say today you're spending, it's 50-50, 50% of your time on what you're good at. Well, wouldn't it be nice if when you go into that next new role that you're spending more than 50% of your time, right? So try and dig deep on what would you actually be doing day to day if you accepted that new position. Okay. So anyway, hopefully those strategies have been helpful. And if you're interested in taking a deeper dive on clarifying or understanding your strengths and how to leverage them to achieve your goals, be sure to click on the link from my program. The link is myownsuccesscompass.com. And there you'll find out more about my coaching program and, how I take you through the steps to achieve your best results and accelerate your success. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd love to hear from you. So within iTunes, you could simply click on ratings and reviews and leave a comment. Also, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Anyway, thank you for listening and have a great day.